discussion on AI, artificial intelligence. And if there's one thing that AI is not going to be able to do in the future is raise successful people. That is a hard job. And who better to speak about it than Esther Wojcicki, a leading American educator, blended learning expert, founder of the Media Arts program at Palo Alto High Schools. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Esther.
No water? You don't want to kill me before I get out there. Hello, thank you.
Come right up here.
This clicker. Thank you for coming. I'm very happy to be here. I can tell you I've been in Spain. Last time I was here was, my first time I was here, I was 30 years ago. Probably most of you weren't even alive. And then 20 years ago, and now 10 years, every 10 years it seems that I can tell you it dramatically changed, and it's for the better. I've just loved it so far in Madrid. So my goal is to tell you how to raise successful people, but just after my talk this afternoon, actually upstairs on La Nave, I realized that the talk should really be called How to Raise Talent for the 21st Century. How to have as much talent as we need for the 21st century. And right now, we don't have it. So these are really simple lessons for radical results. Simple because they're really easy to do, but don't be deceived. Don't think just because they're so simple they don't work. I've tried this for years, and I have experience doing it. I have the largest media program in the United States, and it's called Palo Alto High School Media Arts. There's over 700 students taking media. So we'll start with learning has changed for the 21st century. How do we learn today? Everybody learns on their phone. When's the last time you went to the library? Everybody learns from their phone, but in fact, the system remains the same. We're still teaching the same way that we did 50 years ago and 100 years ago before there was any internet. And we're still training students for the same skills that we did before, which is basically how to read, how to write, how to do math, and how to follow instructions. But our needs have changed. This is what a typical classroom looks like. Notice that all the kids are interacting with the teacher. You raise your hand, you're recognized by the teacher, that you say something, the next person raises their hand, recognized by the teacher. The interaction between students is minimal. So should students spend more time in school and have more tests? How are we going to try to improve education in Spain, in the world, everywhere? What are we going to do? Should they spend more time in school? So Spain, just to localize it here, has more class time than the EU average, 893 hours in class, and the OECD average is 910. They have more time in school, but unfortunately, more class time has not resulted in better test scores or better outcomes or more talent for the people that need to hire the talent. And why is that? Well, in fact, more class time does not guarantee a better education. That's according to Andreas Schlechter, the head of the PISA tests. He's going to be here, or he's already here, or I don't know, he's coming. So you probably want to hear from him. He's the head of it. And so it does not result in a better education. Just because you spend more time in school, that's not a guarantee. So what happens in class is what matters. What the students are doing in that class time is how you're going to improve the education. So PISA warns that Spain won't improve its academic performance until students spend more time on finding their own solutions to problems and less time on memorizing. So we're all memorizing, not only here in Spain, but in France and in Germany. Everywhere we're memorizing, but to different degrees. There is less memorizing in some countries. In parts of the United States, there's less memorizing. But why are we memorizing? All memorizing to pass the tests. And the question is memorizing learning? Do you learn when you memorize? The statistics say that even if you got 100% on a test, 2 weeks after that test, you only remember 32%. So is that learning? That's the question. What are we doing by forcing memorization? So we're still preparing students for the last century when memorization was an important skill. So when I was going to school, there were no computers. There was no portable phone. If I didn't memorize, I couldn't do anything. And if I didn't know how to use the library in the Dewey Decimal System, I couldn't do anything. But today, I have in my pocket a little encyclopedia. We have our phone. Every single one of us has a phone in a pocket. And what you need to know is how to use that phone intelligently. We need to change the culture of the classroom. And it's really hard to change the culture. So here's something interesting for you to know. There's 2 institutions that are very resistant to change. One of them is the school. Why? The purpose of the school is to perpetuate culture. So it's hard to change it. The second institution that is very hard to change, I wonder how many of you could guess. Anybody can guess what it is, the second institution that's impossible to change? Don't see any volunteers. The church. That's right. The church is never going to change. So those are 2 institutions that are really impossible to change. People try, but it doesn't work. So the PISA test, that's the one everybody uses to compare one country to another, like which country is doing the best. By the way, it's Finland and Singapore. Which countries are doing the poorest? So the PISA test, critical thinking in math, science, and reading, it does not measure memorization of facts. So when we're memorizing facts, we're wasting our time. It measures real-world problem solving. The question is, are we teaching that in school? Probably just think about what your children are doing, grandchildren, what you did. Did you have real-world problem-solving opportunities? So we have too much emphasis on following the rules, and by the way, this is what it looks like. You know, we have a lot of cute people. Okay, maybe they aren't sheep, but they're cute. So this is what Einstein said: we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. So we need to figure out how we're going to solve our problems. Number 1 problem facing our planet, and I'm sure you can probably all know what it is, and I'm going to say, is global climate change is a problem. How are we going to solve these problems? How are we going to solve this problem if we don't all work together? So the top 10 skills that all employers want, this is what they're all looking for. Top 10 skills. Number 1, complex problem solving of real-world problems. Number 2, critical thinking. Number 3, creativity. So I want to know, can you learn to be creative by listening to a lecture about it? Or can you learn to be creative by watching me do something creative? How do you learn to be creative? In fact, how do you learn to be a critical thinker? Experience in the classroom. You have to have experience. Why do I say the classroom? Because the average child spends the majority of their waking time in the classroom. It's 8 hours a day. So let's make that time worthwhile for them. Experience is truly the greatest teacher. So this is my suggestion to change the schools, because what we've said is schools are really hard to change. They don't want to change, but they're willing to change a little. They know they need to change. We all know they need to change. So my suggestion is, how about changing just 20% of the time? Just 20%. 80% of the time, direct instruction, normal curriculum, normal teaching methods. 80% of the time, you get to do the same thing. It's just 20% of the time can be devoted to what we can call moonshot time, or 20% time, or genius time. I don't care what we call it. It's a time for students to do things that they come up with. It's called student-directed learning. By the way, Google was one of the first companies on the planet to have what they call 20% time. So their employees, they get to work for 20% time on a project that they think will make the world better. Any project. And some of the projects that have come out of 20% time at Google, one of them many of you know, is called Gmail. Gmail was a 20% project somebody thought of. So 20% time can work in the schools. Kids are happy to do 80% of the time things that other people tell them to do if they can have just a little bit of time to do something they want to do. So student-directed learning can come from all kinds of sources. You don't have to invent it. Creative Commons is the open web. Coursera. A lot of people go on Coursera and never finish the courses. As a matter of fact, 95% of them drop out. But they don't drop out if they're working together in teams. And this provides resources. The teacher doesn't have to teach it. Kids can come on that website, or Khan Academy, or MIT OpenCourseWare, any of those themselves. The number one site that gets the most hits for learning is YouTube. More people use YouTube to learn than any other site in the world. It gets 1 billion hits a day. Yep, a lot. So there's so many opportunities to make the world a better place. Well, who do we need to help us make the world a better place? Young entrepreneurs. These are the people that we should be giving an opportunity in school. They come up with all kinds of exciting ideas. Let them try them out. Creativity is something that we need to encourage. Here's an example of something that you probably don't know about, because none of us were around in 1868. The Salon in Paris. This was a place to exhibit the best art of the time, the best art. And so there was a group of young people who wanted to exhibit their art, and they were denied. And they begged and begged and begged, and they finally got in. And this is one of the artists. Anybody know who this is? This is Renoir. And this is the other one, Monet. Plus there were 10 others, including Van Gogh. They were all rejected. They were sent to the trash bin. Why? Independent thinkers often don't follow the rules, and then they're not rewarded. We need independent thinkers. How's this? Independent thinkers are the people that make the change and improve the world. So still, as I said, our worldwide focus is on memorization. We need to change that focus. Here's what Sir Ken Robinson said, the #1 TED Talk in the world: if you're not prepared to be wrong, you'll never come up with anything original. What does our education system reward? You have to be right all the time. So Steve Jobs, think different. I actually met Steve Jobs years ago. His daughter was in my class, so he used to come and actually hang out in the classroom. He was a parent that just showed up whenever he felt like showing up, and he would just sit on the floor and watch. I remember hearing about this idea of having a phone in your pocket, and I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, what is coming next? But that was, of course, his idea. He had the grit, the vision to follow his dreams. So what are the characteristics of successful people? Number one characteristics of successful people, we'll just wait and see here. People who feel empowered to follow their dreams. Just think about that for a minute. If you feel empowered to follow your dreams, you are going to be a much happier person. I don't care what your dreams are, but if you feel somehow that you have a purpose and a passion and you can follow those dreams, it makes a huge difference. Another characteristic of people who are successful, people who think different. Independence and experience in the classroom equals creativity. And that's what you want, is creativity. So Stanford University is the hotbed of creativity and independent thinking in Silicon Valley, and look at what they say. We believe everyone has the capacity to be creative. Everyone. And I agree, everyone. Stanford D School is a place where students use design to develop their own potential. Stanford accepts students today based on creativity, based on independent thinking, based on kindness. This is actually really important for everyone to know. So this guy, I bet about a lot of you know him. This is James Franco. He's a famous actor. He was my student. And when he was in the 10th and 11th grade, he was exceptionally good at math. His father was a mathematician. Guess what the family thought James would be? A mathematician, right? He worked at NASA even. But James decided that in the 12th grade, he did not want to be a mathematician. He wanted to be an actor. So you as parents, how excited would you be if your child decided he wanted to be an actor instead of a mathematician? So just think about that. So one thing, and he wrote the introduction to my first book, and this is what he said in the introduction. She showed me I could take my dreams as seriously as I wanted. So everybody needs somebody in their life, and usually it's best if they're a teacher or a mentor who believes in them and can support them in their dreams. So people who believe in themselves are people that are successful. You might want to just think about that again. You have to believe in yourself in order to pursue something with grit. You can't pursue it unless you believe in yourself. People who are not worried about what others think. So this is a bestseller in the United States. Guess why it's a bestseller? Because everybody's worried about what everybody else thinks, and they're trying to figure out how to stop worrying. We're looking around constantly at what everybody's thinking. This is a professor at Harvard School of Education. His message is similar. He says that basically dark horses are people who follow their dreams, and their dreams are passion and fulfillment, not necessarily big titles and lots of money. Whatever it is that you want makes the difference. This is Ray Dalio. He's a very famous hedge fund guy. I think he's the largest in the world. He says in this book, called Principles by Ray Dalio, I can tell you the whole book, so you don't have to read it. A purpose in life, that's it. And he says, doing things that matter to you is what matters. So the golden ticket money can't buy is purpose. You want to have a sense of control at least 51% of the time. Why do I say 51? Nobody has a sense of control all the time. It's impossible. But if the majority of time you have some control, I think you'll be pretty happy. You want to have successful relationships. That is one of the keys. And so last night I had the opportunity to meet a very interesting guy. His name is Richard Vaughn. He has a school here in Spain that he teaches English. I don't know how many of you have heard of this Vaughn School where you can learn English. I'll tell you, it's amazing. How many of you heard of this school, Vaughn School? Well, he's got more books, television, radio, everything. He's incredible. I was so excited to meet him. He told me, he said, the most important thing and the most successful way that he gets students to learn English is hire teachers that care. Teachers are the key, according to him. And he looks for two things in the teachers. Humility is number one, empathy is number two. Those are the two things he looks for. It ties in 100% to what I'm going to be telling you, because relationships, and he's right, a student who likes the teacher and a teacher who can connect to the student will make that student want to learn. Here it is, the three most important things in education. The three. Number one, relationships. Number two, relationships. And number three, relationships. Sure, you've heard this for real estate, right? Three most important things in real estate: location, location, and location. So this is the same thing only for education. The relationship between the teacher and the students, and the teacher and the students and the students. You want to feel like you're part of a community. You want to feel excited about going to school. That's what I'm saying. My suggestions are really simple. They're not complex. So how do we teach this? So I have a book that's coming out in Spanish on the 14th of November. It's in English now, How to Raise Successful People. So one of the covers is the UK edition, which is available here. The other cover is the US edition with the people jumping on it. And the third one is the one in Spanish coming out in November. They all say this pretty much the same thing. And I just have those three covers so you know what it is. The first edition that came out on May 7th sold out in 2 weeks in the US, the first printing. So then we had to hunt around for more paper to print it. By the way, there's a shortage of paper these days. It's not clear 100% why. So in that book, I talk about TRIC, and that was on my very first slide. And TRIC stands for these 5 things, and I just want you to remember. This is how to make every single teacher in every single classroom into a superstar teacher. What I'm trying to do is empower teachers. Trust, they have to have trust themselves, trust the students. Respect, independence, collaboration, and kindness. And it all adds up to TRIC. And this is like the key to the same thing that Richard Vaughn is talking about. You want a teacher who is going to be able to engender some kind of respect and caring for the students. So it's TRIC again: trust, respect, independence, collaboration, kindness. I say it starts in childhood. It starts with the parents. 0 to 5 are the most important years. Why? 85% of the brain capacity is developed in the first 5 years. If you do not know that, it's important for you to know. What you're doing with your child in the first 5 years is critical. So this book is targeting parents, it's targeting teachers, and it's targeting the corporate world, all three, because it's the same methodology in all three. So I thought I would just tell you who my first guinea pigs were. because, everybody has to try stuff out. And I've been doing this, since my first child was born, 1968. And this is Susan in the middle, Janet the second one, and Anne the third one. And so I tried out all these methods on them, 0 to 5, 5 to 10, all this stuff. Some of them worked. Thank God most of them worked. Some of them did not work. There was a little bit of chaos in my house, but anyway. So for those of you who do not know, I'll show you who they are today. This is what they look like today. The one in the middle is Susan, and Susan is the CEO of YouTube. The second one on this side is Anne, and Anne is the founder and the CEO of 23andMe. And the third one is Janet. She's the one wearing the jacket, and she is a professor of pediatrics at UCSF Medical Center, focused on the obesity epidemic. So the fact that they felt empowered to follow their dreams and do what matters to them, and in today's world, it is not an easy path, as you know. And that is one of the reasons I think that they were able to succeed in the tech world and to succeed in the academic world, is because they've had the grit and the sense that they can do it, which is what I'm trying to give all students in my classes. Trust and belief in yourself, respecting yourself. That is one thing that a lot of people have trouble with. They don't trust themselves, they don't believe themselves, and most of all, they don't forgive themselves when they make a mistake, which is they should forgive themselves. Trust your child and they will believe in themselves. That's just the simple principle. So a 19-year study reveals kindergarten students with these two skills are twice as likely to obtain a college degree, and they have nothing to do with reading. Here it is. Social emotional skills. So this is, again, believing in yourself, trusting yourself, working on things that you care about. So my suggestion is let kids problem solve, let them explore, or encourage peer-to-peer learning. It's not as fast, but it works more effectively. Kids learn the most from each other. All educational research shows that the most effective teacher for a student is other students in the class, peer-to-peer. So let's do that in the college level, let's do that high school level, let's do that in elementary level. Let's do that at home. Cut down on the competition. Stop comparing them to the kid next door. All the parents, I don't know what it's like here in Spain, but in the US, everybody's comparing everything. Oh, does your kid know how to read yet? He's only 3. Or, the most searched thing is about toilet training. Everybody wants to know if their kid is toilet trained and the kid next door seems to have done it faster. So in fact, I bet none of you have asked each other when you were toilet trained. So what difference does it make? If we could stop comparing our kids one to the other. Cut down on the memorizing. Teachers teach to the set test. So maybe we should cut down on that. Sir Ken Robinson says, again, we stigmatize mistakes, and we're now running national education systems where mistakes are the worst thing you can make. And the result is we're educating people out of their creative capacities. So one thing, we can change the test. Okay, Andrea Schlechter is coming tomorrow. Maybe you can ask him about that. How can we change the test? How can we stop teaching things that require memorization? We need to respect all teachers. Do we respect all teachers? We have a lot of problem worldwide respecting teachers. In Finland they do, and it makes a huge difference. So this is one of the things that really matters a lot. This is what I do in my classroom, and this is what that's recommended. We have a mastery system of learning as opposed to the typical system of learning. You get a grade only when you master it. not when you are first trying. So if takes you 3 times to write an essay and revise it, you get the grade at the end, which is the A. If it takes the same thing in math, how long does it take you to learn the concepts? Keep doing it until you get it. The mastery system of learning cuts down on the pressure. There's 2 groups that are working on it. Mastery Connect, which is part of Instructure, which is a big company in the United States, and Mastery Transcript Consortium, also working on it. So helicopter parenting, the reason most parents are helicopter parents is they have fear of making mistakes. However, I've heard here in Spain, helicopter parenting is much reduced. In the United States, it's an epidemic. It's a real problem. And kids lack control and purpose. They become depressed because the parents are trying to clear the way. Another way to call it is snowplow parents. They clear the path. So this is from The Guardian. John Marsden said, worldwide, on toxic parenting, I've never seen this level of anxiety. So many parents are like freaked out because they don't know what to do with their kids. They think it's their responsibility as opposed to the child's responsibility. All this is in my book, by the way. This is the American Psychological Association. These are statistics in the US. They're pretty grim. 84% of students feel unable to cope. Why? Because the parents have been doing everything for them beforehand. And so they go off to college and they feel incapable of handling their own problems. It makes sense. The more parents and teachers control the kids, the less empowered they will feel. The more fearful they are of making mistakes. This is another very sad statistic. Suicide rates among US youth at the highest point since 2000. So this is the big fish, little pond theory that I promote. It's in Malcolm Gladwell's book. Chapter 3, better to be a big fish in a little pond than be a little fish in a big pond. Because your self-esteem is better when you're a big fish in a little pond and when you feel better about yourself. As I said earlier, it's really important for you to feel as empowered as possible. So statistics from Stanford proves this to be true. Big fish, little pond theory. Little ponds tend to be more welcoming. They offer more support, a greater sense of community. So this is also from the New York Times. We have ruined childhood, and that's because we're all so obsessed with being right. So how's this? This is what is going on in many places. This is the #1 babysitter. Your child is crying. What do? You give them an iPad, you give them a phone. Why is that a bad idea? That's a bad idea because from 0 to 5, you are training children to live in the world. And if you think that the world, every time you are bored, means reaching for an electronic device, and that's what you're going to be doing, how does that interfere with creativity? It's 100%. Because if you are bored, you are creative. If you are not bored and you reach for an electronic device, your creativity is pretty much over. So what are you doing? You're training your child at a very crucial stage out of their creative capacities. So I'm going to give you an example now, positive example. This is my classroom. This is what I do. I use this model everywhere. If you look at the back of the picture, you'll see me back there. This is what it looks like, a real-world example. I use journalism. I could use math. I could use social studies. I could use English. I've taught all those subjects with the same methodology. I just happen to be teaching journalism now because I'm basically trained as a journalist to start. So in this media arts program, we have 700 students, 10 publications, newspaper, magazine, websites, television, radio, video production, graphic design. This is a public school. This is not a private school. I always have to say that now because people always think it's private. There's now 6 media art teachers. It's the largest in the US. This is what it looks like, 25,000 square foot media arts center. It was built 4 years ago. Before that, for 30 years, I was in this building, a portable. So portables, by the way, mean it's a temporary building. It lasted 30 years. So anyway, this is what the classes look like. Trust, notice there's no lecture base here. This is also what the class looks like. This is what the furniture looks like. Notice it's movable. In most universities, the furniture is not movable and it's all lecture-based. So you have to think about how you can do that. Here is more. This is a typical class period. This is another class period. These are just different kids in different locations in the school. And notice they all look like it's a workplace. And that's what school should look like. This is what they produce. This comes out every 2 to 3 weeks. It's a full-size newspaper produced by 15 to 18-year-olds. And it runs 24 to 28 pages, 3 sections, news section, arts and entertainment section, and sports section. And so why do I do this? I'm not trying to train a whole bunch of journalists. I'm trying to train people with 21st century skills. I'm trying to train the talent that everybody wants to hire. They have skills, internet skills, they have all the interaction, cooperation skills, independent skills. They've got all the skills that everybody wants in their employees. This is an example of a 2-page spread that they made about divorce, because in the US we have a 50% divorce rate. This is a magazine, one of the magazines. Again, they look professional, but I'm telling you, they're just kids. You saw pictures of them. They're the ones that do this. They come up with their own ideas. They come up with their own page count. They do everything. Another magazine that's Verde, which is actually, they named it after quite a bit of disputing. This is a sports magazine. And it's like 60 to 80 pages of sports, and the main sports that they cover are high school sports. So you can imagine how excited all the kids who are playing in the sports feel about this. They're like, love to be covered in the publication, and of course the parents, everybody loves it. So they get the top awards in the US. They've won more gold crowns than any United States school. Who pays for it? All self-supporting. Why? Because I'm training them with entrepreneurial skills. They've got to pay the bills. They don't get enough advertising, they can't publish that number of pages. And how do they sell advertising? Just like you do. It's tough. They get rejected 80% of the time. They come back and say, oh my God, I don't want to do that anymore. It's so hard. Everybody says no. It's like, hey, you're getting trained for the real world. It's perfect. That's exactly what happens. So the peer pressure keeps them motivated. They own and they control the publication. In all the years I've been there, they have never once not published. Never. So they always raise the money and they always do it. It's real world learning. They're learning and practicing trick every day. Here's just one example. This is Steve Jobs' daughter. She wrote this book called Small Fry. I don't know if you've heard about it. It was pretty controversial because she tells the truth from her perspective about her dad. This is, again, James Franco. He was in Eat, Pray, Love, 127 Hours, the interview in Spider-Man. And this, again, is what he said, which I think is really important, which is why it's twice in this publication. She showed me I could take my dreams as seriously as I wanted. Every student should have that, be able to make that statement. They need somebody in their life who believes in them. So what can you do now? Implement policies that support 20% time. That 20% time gives kids hope. Just think, 5 days a week you work and you might not like the job, but On the weekend, you have hope, right? You get to go out and do something else. Let them have 20% time in school. Change the education policies. Start small. Make little changes each day, because it's hard to make big changes. Trick. Have them do a little trust, a little respect, independence, collaboration, and kindness. Makes a huge difference. So right now, it's always sit, stay, did they put it back up? Sit, stay, heal, never think, innovate, and be yourself. So can we make sure that we are not doing these bad things to our kids? So I'm also doing something else I just started. This woman, a friend of mine who was the head of Microsoft in Canada, communications, wrote a book called The Greenhouse Approach, which is targeting entrepreneurs. And so we're joining together to put this together. So we're going to try to help companies do this as well. Not just schools, not just parents, but companies. Because how you treat your employees is the quality of the product you're going to get at the end, whether it's a service product or something you hold in your hand or something that you need in your house. So let's improve the whole world in some way. Education, parenting, corporate world. Thank you very much.